and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. We're here at the South Park Center, and I'd like to be joined with Charlotte with her fantastic film, Psycho Baby. Let's take another clip.
I'll tell Sadie the truth. Then she'll understand.
Hi, you.
Fuck.
Charlotte, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the New Filmmakers Los Angeles family. Really happy to have you here. Psycho Baby was absolutely brilliant. I've got so many questions, but for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Sure. Psycho Baby is a queer dark comedy about a love addict and a psychopath that get entangled in a romantic relationship. And our lead character, Andra, is a diagnosed psychopath, and basically she's challenged by a girl who gives her a love letter, and she doesn't think she's capable of being in a relationship or being in love. And before she knows it, and like all queer relationships, she just gets thrown into it, and overnight they're in a very serious something.
Yeah.
And we kind of see, how is this gonna go? Two people from very different sides of a natural spectrum, and keeping those grounded and realistic, and you know, it's not a slasher. So.
It's a brilliant story. Like I was like so intrigued from the very first moment, from that first shot where you're like the whole speech that she has and tells about her experience and her feelings. And I was like, oh, I've never seen a film like this. This is so cool. It's always so refreshing to see brilliant new ideas. We've never really seen it from these perspectives either. Like, where did the inspiration come for you in creating this story for us?
Yeah, inspiration came from a lot of places for me with this film, but I think initially it started with heartbreak. I think queer relationships have a way of being especially heartbreaking. I've had my fair share of, I've dated men, I've dated women, but I was going through a very tough breakup at the time, and when you break up with someone, people are often saying, "Oh, they're such a psychopath," or they, your friends love to.
We throw that word around a lot, don't we?
We throw it around. We love to call anybody a psychopath.
Without not knowing the meaning of it.
Right, and not knowing how intense that is, and that also people live on the ASPD spectrum, and that it's very insulting.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's true. We do all think like everyone we date is a psychopath to some degree, and that's how we, I think, justify and make peace with something ending.
Yeah.
And so at first it started as a way for me to work through my own emotions, but then as I started writing the piece, it became, it was a more realized thing of, oh, this is a bigger thing. I'm realizing that in Hollywood, when people have characters that are on this ASPD spectrum, which is antisocial personality disorder, and are on this, a social spectrum of, maybe not operating in the same way that a neurotypical would. And as someone who's neurodivergent and is on the spectrum in my own ways, and queer and, disabled and so many different things, it's really important for me to look at characters like this and be like, how can we ground them? So then it became about how can I do this justice, this psychopath character?
Yeah.
And
you did a great job with that, though, honestly,
Thank
Charlotte.
you.
Like, it's so interesting because, I went, after I watched your film, I went on this like complete rabbit hole of YouTube and every psychopath, but we don't really see a psychopath like this character. Like, it's always going to be like the flipping, someone that's done serial killed and done things like that. We never see the spectrum side of it, like the everyday life of people, because I think we're so used to thrusting that word out there, in such a derogatory way to people on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And you did it so well. What was kind of, firstly, I just want to, get into the casting because I thought your cast was so good. But how did you go about like even researching this, particularly on a level-headed where you could relate to this character?
Yeah. Well, for me, at the time, I did feel like I had dated a handful of psychopaths. And I think I will still say that I have, and probably you have. I also love people who are on this spectrum. And again, psychopath is kind of an antiquated word. Now, as much, we wouldn't really classify it in this way, but it is that grabby word that everyone looks for.
Exactly.
But people are all over this spectrum, this social, antisocial spectrum. And for me, I just, I think I wanted to do it justice, so I wanted to talk to people who are on this spectrum. And I do have a close friend who's on this spectrum as well, and so I was speaking to her about it, and I was really like watching so many films about psychopaths and like seeing like, okay, yes, like even my dad was like, well, when is she gonna kill her? And I'm like, well, never, because that's not the point. Like 1% of all psychopaths are violent, so okay, that's like, why is that all we ever see? So,
and that's a very important statistic.
Yes, it's super important. And they say it's either 1 in 14 or 1 in 25. Now the numbers are kind of always shifting based on what they classify, but are psychopaths or are on this spectrum. So it's like in this room alone, there's maybe one, and they're not necessarily going to be a violent slasher type, but they're not a Dahmer type, which I think is important. We love them. We're friends with them. So how could I do this in an honest way? How could I write this in a way that felt like I was doing it justice? So I started actually interviewing people through Reddit and anonymous sources. I gave an email, and people were really generous with their time. People who identified on this spectrum did reach out to me, and we did have really at-length conversations, and I used a lot of their sound bites and like stuff in the script to make sure I was portraying Andra in a way that felt real. Like she could be a real person who was struggling with romance and she didn't understand it, and maybe she couldn't connect with people in the same way, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have the desire to connect.
No, not at all. And you did that so brilliantly with Andra and with your psycho baby in this case.
Thank you.
What a great performance. Like I was mesmerized by just how she played her. Like it was fascinating. How did you go about that, and how did you find her, but also just how did you also direct that too?
Savannah Summers plays Andra, and she's incredible.
So good.
From the moment I met Savannah, I knew I had to put her in something. And I think in the process when I had this idea for Psycho Baby and I was processing, I met Savannah out in the queer scene here in WeHo actually, and we became friends, and I knew she was an actor, but she hadn't really been given a shot before. And I think in Hollywood, that's what everyone's always looking for. They're like, well, when is someone gonna give me my chance? Whether you're a filmmaker like me, you're a writer, you're a producer, you're an actor. And for her, I could feel that. Not the desperation, because I'm desperate too, for sure. We're all like desperate. We're like, give me that opportunity. But she was talking to me one night, actually at a bar, telling me, I just feel like I haven't had this chance yet. And it really stuck with me. And she ended up sending me some of her self-tapes and monologues. And I was like, they're just a tremendous actor. So I wanted to workshop a character around Savannah's strengths. And I just felt no one could do Andra like Savannah, because Savannah has a way of doing the research, but also really tapping in. She's quite method, and she already has a little bit of a deadpan air to her, so a little bit of an Aubrey Plaza thing. So I was like, this is gonna be within a great range for her, but also challenge her. And also when I work with actors, like when I cast Truman Flyer, who played Sadie, another big part of it for me was it was an extensive search to find Truman. But it came through a friend of a friend, and she had never performed before. So this was her first thing, which is, it's crazy. So that was like nerve-wracking, because I was like, this is a first-time actor. But she absolutely crushed it.
Oh, she crushed it.
She crushed it, but we changed the script around her as well. And for me, once talent is attached, I will go back into the script and find places where I can tweak it to, I hope, help that actor deliver a better performance, because I think it's all those steps that lead up to like, before you're on set, what can I do to be the best director? Because I have that power. I also wrote this script, so why don't I just go back and make it so it flows for them? And these words, maybe they're clunky in their mouths. Okay, so this isn't working for this actor. I need to adjust this so that they can deliver a performance that resonates more. And I tried to do that. I failed in some places in this film, I think.
Sure, that's amazing that you have that relationship, that you also, not just a relationship, you have that understanding to be able to, because sometimes I'm sure you're writing, you never know what's going to walk in the room or who's going to suddenly be that person. And so, some people are not even willing to even consider that, let alone do that. So that's such a great, wonderful thing that you did there as well. And I thought the way they really felt like, I felt like this was, it almost felt like almost documentary. It was like that real at times,
Wow.
And I love the way that, the playfulness against and just how, you know, there was love there on both sides, right?
Yeah.
But they just communicated love in different ways, and there's no right or wrong with that. It's just like how it was just different.
Yeah.
What was like? I mean, making this film, like I think. Again, it's always amazing. We've never been in a situation before like this, and I think you gave a real treat for actors to play these kind of characters as well. But like, you know, what was the uncovering of the journey? Like, was there things that you discovered along the way that you felt like, oh, I didn't know this was going to happen, or what things did you kind of discover on this particular film?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I think on every project you're just learning so much and you're failing so much. You're failing into success. I don't know, with this film it was especially challenging because it was so voiceover heavy, which I think, again, people always say it's a no-no. When you're in film school, when you're in art school, when you're talking to other filmmakers, they're like, don't do voiceover, it's gonna be so cheesy, it's not gonna work. And I felt kind of challenged by that because I was like, I really think this character, the comedy of it will be watching her be in a scene and then also having her inner monologue, and she'll be judging people and she'll be ruthless. And to me, that's funny because she's just being honest, she's just being her. And so timing all of that was actually quite a challenge when we were in certain scenes where there were other people with Savannah. And I mean, gosh, there were just so many things. I will say too, like we shot this film a long time ago. We shot it actually the weekend before the first ever pandemic shut down.
Oh my goodness.
But that presented our biggest challenge ever because once we were in post, people were really depressed. And it took us forever to get through post, like unlike anything I've ever experienced. And again, when you're working with such a low budget, and when I say low budget, I mean a few $1,000s, like very, very low. It was with my friends, it was with my community. And so I couldn't say to people, you need to get this done right now, because they're not being paid well or they're not being paid at all. So I kept wondering when we were gonna finish this because, I had never worked on a project before where everyone, and I mean everyone, in post, in the cast and the crew, were so unavailable. Everyone was in a dark place at this time. No one knew what was going on. We couldn't schedule ADR sessions for over a year. People moved out of LA who were working on the film, so getting them back and the timing. So it took us years to finish the film, which is so funny because I've had other projects that are the same length that we finished in post in 2 months, you know? And you're like, how did this take so long? But I like to say this was the baby, and it needed its time, and it was a pandemic baby. And so it's...
Pandemic psycho baby.
It's a pandemic psycho baby. So that was a huge challenge, though, people's mental headspace.
I also, mental headspace is rough, and then you've also got the fact this is also a psychological psychopath, relationship film as well, on top of all of that.
Right.
It's very nice to see, as someone who programs all of, LGBTQ film festivals and juries and things, it was also fresh to see the backdrop of this story about two females that are in a couple together. It wasn't totally the story. Of course, there was identity discovery and sexuality, all those things, but you had a level of where there was more depth to the subject and the story than that film. We talked about this just off camera, but that's something that's important as well, isn't it? Is the showcasing these relationships and these stories, making sure there's complexity in the stories we're telling around queer film, right?
Yeah, I mean, in general, queer films are so far and few between, and really good ones are even tougher to find. And I just think in general, for me as a queer filmmaker, that's always gonna be at the very front of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make a difference. I'm trying to create representation for my people, for the LGBTQ plus community and other communities. I think this is such a wave of diversity, and we're seeing people push for this now more than ever, and it's so important that we all be inclusive and allow filmmakers and artists to come forward and share their POV. And for me, in making anything, it can't just be about the most commercial aspect, which I don't want to just see queer trauma over and over again necessarily, and the coming out story, as we were talking about, it's like we've seen it so many times. What about just seeing queer people struggle in a different way? Because we struggle in, as you know, so many different ways. It's not just about the coming out. That is one of the greatest hurdles, and no shame to anyone who wants to process that in film. I think I will still watch every single one.
Absolutely. No, I think with the film that you've made and created, I think that you've also shed a light on on the spectrum, and it's so refreshing to actually see actually in look of a psychopath and,
Yeah.
and really relating to that. Like,
Yeah.
what's the reaction been like from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think for some people, it definitely catches them off guard.
Yeah.
And, you know, not every film is for everyone.
Yeah.
And I do always like to preface that. But I want anyone who watches this to know that this came from a place of love. And it came from a place of wanting to create more representation for two different groups of people. People
Yeah.
on the ASPD spectrum and also SLAW, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. And as someone, for me, I like don't love to throw it around, but I'm definitely like a recovering love addict.
Yeah.
And for me, Sadie was a character I more identified with.
Yeah.
And again, when we see SLAW individuals, they are so unhinged.
Yeah.
They're just wild, and
Yeah.
they're swinging from the rafters. And so again, showing people who are coming from two different sides of this, and
Yeah.
knowing that you love people and you know people
Yeah.
who are in both of these camps and who are working through things, and everyone is working through something. And so this script did come from a place of love, of wanting to show that two people can come from completely different places, and it's like ships in the night. And just because you miss each other doesn't make it anyone's fault. And I think in the end, I was hoping people would question, well, like, who is the bad guy here, right? Or who
Yeah.
is this psychopath? Because is it the person who shows up from the beginning saying, I don't think I can do this. I'm telling you I don't think I can do this. And this other person saying, no, you can. I'm gonna make you do this. And then that person, the one who's saying, no, you can, is the one who walks away.
Interesting, right?
And
Yeah.
so then you go, well, that's a little challenging to watch that, because I think that's how we all feel in our dynamics. We have a way of being like, well, they're wrong. And it's like, they so are, but so are you.
Yeah.
And you're gonna do the same thing to somebody else, I'm sure. And yeah, it's just a way to process, I think, all of these emotions in more extremes, but also like hopefully ground those extremes and not use them as ways to like exploit
Yeah.
what I hope it is not exploitative in any way.
Yeah, no, I think you got the tone of it really, really well. What is next for you, Charlotte?
Oh gosh, I'm hoping to make 2 new shorts in the next year or so, and then I'm also writing a feature that I'm maybe not super ready to talk about yet because I'm still working through it, but it is another queer dark comedy, and I'm hoping it will be my debut feature. So
Yes.
we're in that camp. And then with Psycho Baby, a producer actually recently approached me kind of wanting to package it as a YA TV show. So
Yes.
I think we're gonna try that. I was kind of ready to move on, but at this point I'm like, if someone comes up to you and says, well, I see it this way, you're like, well, okay. You know,
That's
you're like, we'll
amazing.
try that. But I have to be flexible in that because it will change a lot from, I think, what it
Yeah.
is right now.
Yeah.
But I'm excited at any opportunity. You know, I think when you're like a young filmmaker, you're just hoping anyone sees a glimmer of something. And you
Absolutely.
just have to follow that. And I'd say that's like what I've been trying to do.
Well, credit to you because you got the basis of a really strong story and characters that we still want to see more of. So that's credit to you and you know your writing and the universe you created for us. So well done on that. Just lastly, just to finish, you know, it's really hard to get your stories out there, to just have that push through confidence to be like, I want to put my things out there. If you as an artist, as a creative person, like, you know, do you have any advice out there for filmmakers that just want to like articulate and get their story out there?
Yeah. Yeah, I do get this question a lot, and I think it was a question I asked for so long and a question I'm still asking. And I think the best advice I could ever give was just get out there and start making things.
Yes.
Get a DSLR. Don't think about the resources you have. Like for me, I never think about the resources. If I really want to make something, I will just go make it. I don't need the Alexa 35 to tell a story.
Yes.
Do I want it? Absolutely. Do I want $50,000? Absolutely. But if I only have $500, or if I have no money, if I'm asking friends for favors, can we go out this weekend and shoot this thing? For me, that's where it all began. Like back in college, I made a web series. I made 2 seasons and 22 episodes of a gay web series, and that kind of launched my career. Like Vice wrote about it. It was this thing. And we made that for absolutely nothing. We did that with friends, and like, for me, it is just get out there and do it. If you love it, chase that story. You're gonna, you know, naturally make something pretty crappy every now and then, and I think that's so part of the journey. But just go do it, and don't think about all the hurdles, because that is what producing is. As we know, you're constantly hitting roadblocks, but the best part is you're gonna get over every single one.
Yes.
And you're gonna do it in that moment, and it's just about
Absolutely.
starting.
Charlotte, thank you for the TED Talk. My
I mean,
goodness.
my goodness, she could.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlotte said, get out there and do it and make no excuses. No, I think that's a fantastic piece of advice, honestly, because, there should be nothing holding us back, and just give it, put out there, give it a go. And but just to reiterate, it looked like fantastic quality in terms of what you had in front of camera and behind camera. So, credit to you on making that on the budget that you were given as well. So well done. So thank you, Charlotte, for being here. Welcome to the New Filmmakers LA family. Can't wait to see many more of your projects. So thank you very much, Charlotte, everybody.